birthday plans, girl, you got it.
Hey you guys, and welcome back to my channel. Yes, we're putting the looks out back to back this week. Today I have a latex look for y'all, but instead of doing it on the whole face, we just did it on the eyes. So we're gonna hop right into it by laying her eyebrows down with some dual lash glue, because of course we want to make sure those eyebrows are out of the way. Then after you have your lash glue laid down, you're just gonna brush through the eyebrows and then press them down so that way they can stay into place. Now I'm gonna draw out the shape I'm gonna use for her cut crease, so that way I'm able to keep the latex in the lines. If you're doing your whole face, then you don't have to worry about this, but this is just so I have a stencil. Now I'm going to take my Glam Guard, which you can find linked inside of the description, and that way when I get done with her eyeshadow, I'll be able to pull this tape off and get a nice crisp line. Now I'm just going to use a liner brush to draw out my shape, and I'm going to be putting out my own set of liner brushes towards the end of the summer, so make sure you guys are looking out. Now I'm going to use liquid latex with that liner brush just to draw out the shapes on the eyelid, and this actually was not the easiest thing to do. Make sure when you do your lines, you go over it a couple times so that way it's thick enough to just pull off at the end. And because I'm so used to using my liner brushes to cut the creases, I like thin liner brushes, so that's all I have. I would use a thicker liner brush and try to draw out your shapes beforehand, even though mine kind of got lost. I wanted to make sure the latex was dry all the way, so I just took my fan and went over her eyes for a couple of minutes to make sure that latex was dry. Now before we get into the eyeshadow, we're going to go ahead and carve out her eyebrows. Today to carve out her eyebrows, I used a little bit of warm beige, and I started at the arch of her eyebrows, just following the natural lines of her brows, and then I slowly moved my way towards the front, just making sure I don't go too far down, because I do not want to get any of this tan concealer where I'm going to put my white concealer for my eyeshadows. Now I'm going to take butterscotch and I'm going to carve out the front part of her eyebrows. And I hate to be the one to say like carving eyebrows is easy, but it's easy when you're on a model that you do all the time and they have shaped eyebrows. So if you're doing eyebrows and they're not easy to do, try to shape them up first so that way you already have a shape on your brows. Now I'm going to set that concealer with some Dermablend translucent powder. And then I'm going to go ahead and go over that shape we already put with that white eyeliner pencil. And to get that shape, I'm going to use the same liner brush I used for that latex, but I cleaned it off. And I'm going to take my Cloud concealer. This is the concealer I always use for my colored eyeshadow bases. Then I'm going to take a flat concealer brush to fill in that inside space. First, I'm going to start by dragging down the concealer from that line onto the lid. Then I'm going to take my flat brush and just fill in the inside. When you're filling the inside with concealer, make sure you don't put too much concealer down because you don't want to have too much underneath your eyeshadows. I like to use some type of dense blending brush so that way I can pat off the excess concealer. At this point, you should be able to see the latex design you laid down. All my brushes I'm using today are from Bloodline Beauty. You can find the link to my Instagram at @Shuntislays. Now you can use any color or combo you want for this eyeshadow. I decided to stick with pastel since we're doing springtime. I just googled pastel rainbows and then I wrote down the order that you lay down the colors in. Now I went ahead and set out about 8 palettes and just made sure that I had the colors laid out that I wanted to use. So we're going to start off with a light pink, and I'm just going to lay this down with one of the small brushes I got from the brush set. After you get the pink to the pigment that you want to go ahead and move on to orange. Now to get up close to the crease line, I make sure I get eyeshadow on the very tip of the brush, and then I press in that eyeshadow right up into that line of concealer. While you're laying down all these eyeshadows, you want to make sure you're lightly tapping over each eyeshadow to blend it together. So as I'm laying my orange, sometimes I go over just the line of that pink, just a small amount to make sure they're blended together. Now I'm going to take a yellow and then I'm going to move on to green. I'm going to do blue and then purple as well. And then to make sure all the colors are blended together, I'm just going to go backwards and work my way to the front. So now I'm going to start with the purple and then work my colors towards the pink. Now I'm going to take her powder contour color and I'm just going to go on the other side of that cut crease to make sure I have that line back sharp. After you add some definition to that line, you can go ahead and pull your tape off and you should get a nice crisp line. For her contour, I did Suede Mocha, and I always add a little bit on the forehead because we're not going to do any foundation underneath it. And then I'm going to take her foundation and I'm going to carve out the top part of her eyebrows. For her foundation, I always do 2 pumps of Macao, 2 pumps of Tahoe, and that usually works every single time. Give or take if she's been in the sun a lot, of course. Now we're going to take that same color and use it on the other side of our eyeshadow just to give that line some extra definition. Now I'm going to take that same flat brush and I'm going to take some foundation and I'm going to apply that all around her face, just making sure I don't get too close to her hairline. When I place the foundation on the face, I don't have to place the foundation everywhere because I do place the foundation over the key areas of her face. When I place foundation on the side of the face, the chin, above the lip, on the nose, and on the forehead. And then I just blend to the other areas of her face. I'm going to use this brush that was provided by Bloodline Beauty to blend out her foundation. And of course, like always, I do not swipe anything on her face. I'm sort of tapping in. It just looks like I'm swiping right now, but I promise you I'm tapping everywhere all over her face. When I tap foundation, make sure you tap around the jawline and get up close to the ears. Please leave the foundation on the forehead so that way it can build some coverage over time. I promise by the time we get to the forehead area, you won't need to do too much blending to it because that is going to be blending together. Foundation is going to look blended even before we get to it. After the foundation is blended, we're going to go through and apply our first concealer. And of course, I always do 2 concealers just like I did on her eyebrows. The same brush I used to lay down her foundation is going to be the same brush I used to apply this concealer as well. I'm going to use this concealer to brighten up under her eyes, also above her lip, her chin, the bridge of her nose, and I'm going to use it to carve out the front part of her eyebrows. I like the eyebrows to look natural with just a little bit of definition. Now I'm going to take that same brush I used to blend out her foundation and I'm just going to blend out the outer edges of that concealer. And then I'm going to apply Suede Mocha to her face so that way I can contour. This brush is also from Bloodline Beauty, but it's from a different set. And I'm going to use that to buff out her contour today. I'm going to use a hack of placing my triangle powder puff over her edges instead of doing my tape today because I just didn't feel like doing tape. I'm going to be honest. I don't feel like doing tape all the time, especially on my models. I'm going to blend going in a diagonal line and move up towards her eye at the same time. So I'm going to blend this contour into that line where you see the concealer start. After that, I'm going to take the same brush and I'm going to tap around her hairline to blend out that contour. As you can see, when you let the foundation sit for a little while and you blend out the contour, it's going to blend right into that foundation. Next, I'm going to take a brush also from the set and I'm going to blend out the concealer on her nose and in between her eyebrows. I'm also going to take this brush and blend out that concealer line that is closest to her nose. And since there was a little line between her contour and that concealer, I went ahead and took that brush and blended that out as well. Now I'm going to apply Blush Lily from Juvia's Place Cosmetics on the tip of her cheeks. And I'm going to take that same brush I used to blend out the edges of that concealer and I'm going to use that to blend out her blush. I used the flat concealer brush to apply my cream contour to her nose. And then I'm going to take a fluffy brush and I'm just going to blend out that concealer up and down the sides of her nose. This is actually an eyeshadow brush, but we're going to use this to blend out her nose contour today. You pretty much can use any brush as long as it's flat and fluffy at the same time so you can blend it out and still keep that nice shape. I'm going to blend this contour up into her eyebrows for a natural look. Using my Bloodline Beauty powder puff, I'm going to blend underneath her eyes. I'm going to take this powder puff and I'm going to lightly blend over the concealer I already have on her face, just blending that concealer into her blush and also blending that concealer into her nose contour. Now I'm going to use my setting powder from Bloodline Beauty and I'm going to set all of that places we put that concealer. I'm going to start by having her find a focal point on my ceiling and have her look up while I'm doing this powder. Taking a light amount of powder on my powder puff, I'm going to set underneath her eyes. I'm also going to set above her lip. I'm going to set her chin. And I'm also going to set her entire forehead with this powder. To bake on her nose, I'm going to fold my triangle powder puff in half so that way it creates a straight line. And I'm going to take a generous amount of that powder and I'm going to just dab it on her nose just to add some definition on her nose later on. This is the time you want to go ahead and set the entire forehead. And it is also okay if you get some powder on the front part of the eyebrows. It's just going to help it look more natural at the end. Taking this brush from Bloodline Beauty, I'm just going to go into my Fenty powder, and I do not remember what shade this is, but it's either 345 or 410, and I'm going to set all the areas I didn't put that translucent powder. To To bake her face, I'm using my Dermablend translucent powder as always, taking a generous amount on my powder puff, starting at her nose and taking it up towards her temple, making sure I do not go on the eyeshadow and making sure my powder puff does not go too far into her eyes because you don't want her eyes to start watering. We're also going to bake on her chin, and I'm going to bake in between her eyebrows. I like to add a little bit of extra powder, especially for those who tell me they have oily skin. To contour her face, I'm going to use Bloodline Beauty's contour palette, and I'm going to take a brush from their set that mimics the brush I used to put the cream contour on her face. You want to tap over the same place you put the cream contour, slowly blending into the liquid blush. You want to make sure everything is blended and you do not see any harsh lines of demarcation. Now I'm going to take a blending brush to add some contour to her nose. I'm using that same color I used to contour her cheeks. When I do her nose, I like to be conscious of the fact that the powder on the inside of the nose is going to really be the guide for how her nose is going to be at the end. So the smaller you make that line while you're contouring is as small as the nose is going to be when you're doing the face. For blush, I'm going to use the pink blush from my Makeup Queen palette from Bloodline Beauty. And I'm just going to apply that on top of where I put the liquid blush. Because you're baking, you can sort of see the bake sort of slip away as you blend. I'm going to reverse contour with my Dermablend powder, and I'm just going to do a line underneath her cheekbone so I can add some brightness and some definition underneath that contour powder. I'm going to use my Morphe eyebrow pencil to fill in her eyebrows. I'm going to start by doing a line at the bottom of her natural brow, and then I'm going to do a line at the top of her natural brow. After I do those lines, I'm going to take the time to fill in the inside. You want to make sure you're not pressing down too hard on your pencil because you don't want the eyebrows to be too dark. When you're done filling in your eyebrows, just make sure you go through with their spoolie and blend out the front part. For her under eye, I did some black liner in her waterline, and then I went through with each color I used on her eyelid, and I just placed it underneath that black, and then I went through with a little bit more black eyeshadow. It ended up sort of taking it away, but it's okay because it still had the hues in the background. Now it's time to pull off that liquid latex. I'm just going to take the latex off her eyes with some tweezers. You want to be really careful if you're doing this on a model and not yourself because you don't want to pinch her. I'm sure I pinched her a couple of times, but she stayed still the whole time, which is crazy. Now it's time to do her lips, and I'm going to use products today from Forever Ritzy. They are linked on some of my videos in my Instagram account. For her lip liner, I'm going to take the shade K1, and I'm going to line the outside of her lips while her lips are pressed together so I can see the line completely. You can also have them smile, but I don't like to put smile lines automatically into the face while I'm still doing it, so I have them press their lips together. After I line the bottom lip, I'm just going to go ahead and outline her Cupid's bow and then connect those lines. Anytime I'm getting ready to do lips, I go ahead and wipe their lips off because I don't have them press their lips together while I'm doing their makeup. I just wipe it off afterwards. I just don't ever show that part in my videos, but you do want to make sure you start off with a clean lip. After I get the line how I want, I'm just going to add some definition to the liner by filling it in on the lips a little bit more and definitely filling it in a little bit further into the corners. I'm going to blend the inside of her lip liner with a disposable lip brush. This is just going to make sure it's easier to blend into the lipstick. Now it's time to apply eyelashes. The lashes I'm using today are from Essence Cosmetics, and they are linked in my Instagram as well. When I do lashes, I apply them to the outer part of the eye and I sort of pull them to the front. After I apply glue to the lash line and the lash band line as well. After your lashes are in place, just press them into the eyes a little bit to make sure they're down all the way. For her lipstick, I'm going to use Mademoiselle mixed with a little bit of Cloud Concealer from Too Faced, and this is going to give me the perfect light pink shade. I'm only going to apply lipstick to the bottom lip because I don't like to have too much products on the lip. It starts to look sticky. I'll mainly apply lip products to the bottom lip and then have them pat their lips together to transfer it to the top. I'm going to take a clean disposable and I'm just going to blend the edges into that lip liner. Now for the first time ever, and I am hooked on using colored lip gloss to go over the lip liner. No more clear lip gloss for me. I don't remember the shade I used, but it is going to be linked in my Instagram. I am going to take this brown lip gloss from Forever Ritzy, and I'm just going to go over my brown lip liner. Have her tap her lips together for some blending, and then I'm going to go in with this light pink. This is also from Forever Ritzy, and I'm just going to apply it to the bottom lip again, and I'm going to have her pat her lips together to transfer it to the top. And then I'm going to blend out those edges once again. I'm going to take that same brush I used to apply that Dermablend to her eyelid. I'm going to use this brush in a tapping, swiping motion to take off the powder on her face. To get rid of those harsh lines, you want to make sure you take your time going over it, so that way you don't leave behind any baking residue. After I dust off all the baking powder, I just like to take whatever is left on my face brush and use whatever powder is on that brush to go over the other areas of her face we didn't put that translucent powder. To set her face, I'm going to use my Morphe Continuous Setting Spray. I'm going to spray a generous amount on her face and then let her use a fan to dry her face. I'm going to apply highlight to the tip of her nose and to the bridge of her nose, but only after I do one layer of setting spray. I never do any type of highlighting before setting spray. I just feel like it comes out a lot better. For the final steps of my makeup routine, I like to go back in with my continuous setting spray, and then on top of my continuous setting spray, I'll spray a little bit of my Revolution spray. Let me not even play, it's a lot of spray. I spray a lot of spray on my client's face just because I want to make sure that it's on as long as possible. And adding the spray to the face just brings everything together. And I always like to get Camille reactions. She gives me the best reactions. I love her so much. And just like that, y'all, we are done. Thank you for tuning into my tutorial. I hope you guys loved it. Don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe. And turn those notification bells on so you can get a notification every time I post a video. Don't forget to follow me at I am Shuntislays on all my social media. For any extra tips, tricks, and products I use in my videos, just head over to my website. I am having an $8 sale right now. I'll see you guys there. Bye, y'all.